Hello and welcome everyone. I am C.S.Gilmore, and today we're going to be talking about the Warhammer 40k book, The Deacon of Wounds. And if you can't guess from the imagery, we're going to be dealing with some Nurgle stuff today. Though how the setting for this is the planet of Theotokos is dying. Drought has wiped out all but the capital city of Marguerite. Worse, an outbreak of a terrible plague known as the Grey Tears ravages its populace. Only the charismatic Arch-Deacon Ambrose stands in the way of desperation and anarchy. But as the plague rampages through the streets, murdering its victims with unnatural symptoms, Ambrose struggles to confront the appalling measures he must take to save his people. Right. I'm not sure how long this discussion will be because this book isn't that long. It's only maybe just over. It's right about 203-ish pages, give or take. Yeah. So yeah, pretty short for most novels, but it's well written. You get a number of characters. Each of them have their own ways of doing things. But the main character is this deacon, the Arch-Deacon Ambrose. And as the discussion talks about, this is the last city on this planet left. There's been a massive drought, population's dying, and then there's this plague of the Grey Tears. People die and they have these weird, really thick, mucusy tears. And whatnot. They seem to kind of choke to death, if I remember right, and their eyes bulging out, that sort of thing. Pretty gross. Bad way to die. As you might expect, the ecclesiarchy is not always the best and tends to have a problem with corruption and other issues. The Ambrose is one who is very aware of some of that corruption and is trying to fight it, but he can only do so much about it. He also, though of course there is some potential here of some unreliable narrator, we're getting his perspective on a lot of this. So a lot goes on throughout this story of him just trying to talk to the people, maintain morale, continue to instill faith in the God Emperor, and the God Emperor will save them, and trying to overcome this plague as it spreads throughout this, as it starts infecting the city and other things, and they still go without rain. And he has some encounters with the Grey Tears, which, as it mentions, has some strange, unnatural symptoms. One of those being, at least a few occasions, I believe, those mucusy tears get up and kind of stand up, kind of like antenna or eye stalks, and sing a little ditty of some sort. I forget the exact how it was described, how they sound, and I have to find it. I'd have to dig through the book to find the spot where it has it, but yeah, they sing. Warp shenanigans abound. Anyway, the Archdeacon here is trying very much to save his people, trying to keep them going, trying to find salvation, and as the saying goes, the road to hell is often paved with good intentions. Lots of things happen. The higher ups end up passing away from the Grey Tears. And anyway, the Archdeacon finds himself more and more in a position of leadership as those above him and those who oppose him end up passing away from various means. And I didn't find it in my quick dig through here, but there's at one point he goes and he finds an odd passage in the chapel, like somewhere in one of the chapel basements, if I remember right. He finds an odd passage, and he goes down it, and it's very soggy and weird. And he finds a person down there, a brother down there, maintaining some texts. And people are very desperate at this point. Things are, things are bad. And he goes and does some stupid things. Probably because he couldn't think of how could something horrible be inside of the chapel premises. It's a holy building, would be my guess as to what some of the issues are there. But he doesn't read the signs on the wall that basically say Nurgle, corruption, bad stuff. And he goes and talks to his brother and gets some texts from him that describe a prayer for rain. And and he's convinced himself, oh, this is all the God Emperor. These are some old texts that were lost and managed to survive this damp environment somehow. And yeah, they seem a little weird, but yeah, okay, weird prayer to the God Emperor to ask for rain and for deliverance. All right, the worship of the God Emperor does take some weird forms sometimes from planet to planet, and it shifts a little bit over the years sometimes from population during the population changeover. Let's see. There was a part I wanted to share here. You get all sorts of fun little hints that things aren't right. Things are getting worse throughout as the story develops, and more of the population dies to the plague and the drought. Where is a good example here of something? Well, anyway, throughout the story, yeah, there's various internal conflicts amongst the clergy. There's the generally working with the people. There's a love interest. I forget how they portrayed the ecclesiarchy in this one. If they were like, they don't marry or what. I think there was something along those lines, like he shouldn't be falling in love with anyone. But there's definitely like, oh yeah, he's definitely slipping there. And then there was, but yeah, there was a lot here. Like I mentioned, texts that are very questionable, and he really should have seen the signs. But he was so desperate for answers and for salvation, he turned a blind eye to it and convinced himself it was salvation. Anyway, he gets some people together. And he gets some of the faithful together near the end of the book, and they perform the ritual. So he's like, it'll be all right, no matter what you are thinking right now. Everything will be all right, I promise. Let us begin, Ambrose said. Nessus came to him and presented the scroll. He unrolled it slowly, holding it up for Ambrose to read. Repeat after me, said Ambrose, and his tiny congregation obeyed. Father of rain, he intoned slowly, pausing after each phrase for the echoed responses. Theotokos cries out to thee. A drought is upon her waters, and they are dried up, for this is the land of false belief. But praise waiteth for thee, life font, and unto thee shall the vow be performed. O thou that hearest our prayer, unto thee shall all flesh come. The words seemed strange to him, the tone different from what he was used to. The passing of ages had made alterations to the worship of the God Emperor, but there were still elements that were familiar, the plea to the Father and the promise of obedience, were there as they should be. Thou visitest the earth, Ambrose read on, and waterest it. Thou greatly enrichest it with thy river, which is full of water. Thou waterest the ridges abundantly. Thou crownest our hopes with abundance, and thy paths drop fatness. They drop upon the pastures of the wilderness, and the hills rejoice on every side. The valleys also are covered over with thy rain. They shout for joy, they also sing. Gnosis rolled the scroll and placed it on top of the altar. It was no longer needed. Ambrose knew the last few words. He had rehearsed the next few moments in his mind, picturing them as clearly and as fully as he could, teaching himself to understand the salvation they would bring. Hear our prayer, Rain Father. From the folds of his robe, Gnosis produced the relic he had found with the scroll. Its hilt bulged in 3 linked circles of iron. This man is really not catching any of these hints here, man. That is very much a Nurgle sign. I'm guessing he was maybe one of the groups of ecclesiarchy that didn't get taught the warning signs of chaos properly or something, because red flags, green flags in this case, I guess, but not of a go sort, of a no bad corruption sort. Let's see. Its hilt bulged in 3 linked circles of iron. Its blade was a dark green metal that seemed to glisten in the flickering light of the chapel. Barely audible, Bethia pounded on the armor glass and screamed. Her sister looked up from her prayers for a moment, curious, but the sounds were too small. So yeah, the person he likes is watching all this from above, locked in a room, if I remember right. I forget the exact reasons why she was up there locked in there, but it may have been because she was questioning things. I can't remember exactly. Once again, more red flags used, very much ignoring his desperation to save the people. Right. Then, Hear our prayer, Rain Father, she repeated with her brother and her parents. Ambrose smiled in Bethia's direction again. This will be all right. The promise she could not hear. This is our gift, he said. This is the hardest part. This is the cost. She would not understand what he now had to do. She would think he was a monster, not just because of his actions, but for making her witness them. If only you knew, my love, if only you knew that forcing you to see this is really my cost. This is the price I must pay, and because of this cost to me, you will live. This is our gift, the family repeated. Once again, he's definitely he's been a little too corrupted here to recognize his own corruption, I think. Still smiling gently, he grabbed Havoc's hair, pulled back his head, and slit his throat. My man. Okay, so the worship of the God Emperor does get pretty crazy, especially amongst, like, say, some of the blood death cultist types, but how did he not catch this as a, oh wait, no, bad? Blood spurted over the altar. Burin staggered back in shock. The rest of the family screamed. Before they could rise, Taskar and his fellow Cenobites held them in place. Arch-Deacon Baron, confused, shuffled back and forth. Repeat the prayers, Chapel Master, all is well. This is our gift, Baron said, fussing at the blood that had spattered his robes. Illyri struggled hard in Taskar's grip. Ambrose went to her next. All is well, he said again. Hush. He reassured her as she screamed. His slash opened her neck, adding the spray of her veins to the slick that covered the altar. Then he killed her children too. The Cenobites stood back from the corpses. Ambrose glanced at Gnosis, whose hood bent in approving nod. Rain Father, Ambrose shouted. I think Gnosis was the brother he found down in the very much Nurgle corrupted catacomb area below the record room, in a weird crevice in the wall. His arms raised, the knife dripping blood down his arm. Hear me. I hear. Ambrose staggered and dropped the knife. The voice was in his head and in the air at the same time. It was deeper than night. It rolled thick and liquid. It gave birth to thunder, shattering peals that seemed to come from the ground as much as from the sky. Here's a bit of the chant from the weird eye stalk mucus membranes mucus things. Dee 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 dee. Yes, so that's imagine that as being sung by weird mucus things popping out of your eyes. Rivers of slime all over, horrible things. The rain finally comes, but it's slimy mucus stuff. You know. If I recall, the love interest also succumbs to the weird eye problem, death, and as part of as all this is going down, he finds all this. Let's see. There's all sorts of chaos. This is right at the end, by the way, where a lot of this is seen. This is the climax of it all. All sorts of stuff going down. The slime is all over the place. All the people he was trying to save seem to be dead now, or whatever, possessed. Ah, the hill trembled from the impact of the footsteps. The voice that had boomed in the chapel returned. It hummed in pleasure to the tune of the worms, profound as an organ's deepest chord, yet thick and blurry, gurgling with phlegm. The Rain Father has answered your call, Gnosis proclaimed. Give your thanks to Roticus. A hill of flesh loomed over the palace. I have come. The whore was the color of a drowned corpse. So yeah, he summoned a great unclean one, or some other really nasty Nurgle demon. Probably a great unclean one from the look of it. Is this a horror book, by the way? So yeah, it wasn't gonna have a happy ending. But this one was a lot of fun. They did really well with like the horror aspects of it. Like the body horror was there, but it wasn't in a way that was just like they're being excessive for to be excessive type deal. It was that's horrific, but perfectly in line with how Nurgle would do it. It was all perfectly like how it would be with the whole Nurgle thing. So yeah, the Deacon of Wounds, a Warhammer horror novel by David Annandale. And as you might guess, I skipped a lot of details like the leadership dying off, him being in the right place at the right time to prevent any of the other corrupt priests from being in a position to take up leadership through seniority or from being in the right place at the right time to get seen as the savior of the people there. And given how 40k is, chances are the ecclesiarchy probably was corrupt. Unfortunately, Ambrose there didn't see his own corruption happening. He was very much intent on saving the people, doing good, and didn't see the signs in himself of, oh gee, I've fallen to chaos, without realizing I've fallen to chaos. Because he was not paying attention to the big red flags all over the place, going, warning, chaos sign, chaos sign, chaos sign. Very specific chaos god, one of the big four. The guy, one of the big ones that really you should have all sorts of, oh yeah, don't talk about that, don't do that, don't. Now I do apologize for kind of focusing on that one part for the most part and just kind of skimming over a lot of the rest. This book, I haven't read it in a long while, but I do recall it was a fun read. I enjoyed it. It really, like I said, it did good with the horror. The characters were interesting, and you could see how the characters developed as especially Ambrose as he went from really just trying to help the people to being chaos corrupted without realizing it to what have I done at the very end but it's already too late. Congratulations, you got a great unclean one. The world is saved by Father Nurgle. I can't remember, was it Grandfather Nurgle or Father Nurgle? The fantasy saying and the 40k saying do two different versions. One of them is Father Nurgle, one of them is Grandfather Nurgle, and I don't remember whether it was the 40k saying that used Father Nurgle. Anyway, there's any other parts here I should really touch on. Yes, let me share the very last piece. The very end. Everything was changing, yet the door to the observation chamber was still a door and still metal. He was able to unlock it. He rushed inside. The air was fetid, but there were a few flies. He slammed the door shut against the swarms. Bethia was still on the throne. From this end of the chamber, he could just see some of her slumped form. She wasn't moving. Bethia, he called. No answer. No movement. The love interest. Oh no, no, no. He rushed to the throne and fell to his knees at the sight of her gray, slack face and empty stare. He took her body in his arms, embracing her at last, when it was too late. Forgive me, he sobbed. Forgive me. He held her tightly, and she was too soft. He couldn't feel her bones. Forgive you, she whispered. Her voice was slurred. It thrummed with tiny wings. Something pattered wetly on the floor. Her body squirmed as if her skin were filled with snakes. Forgive you? Bethia repeated. But you gave me life. And then she stirred. And that's the end. What became of him after that? We don't know. Probably died. Really horribly. Or lived. Really horribly. As Nurgle is often prone towards. Good old unhappy ending. Good horror ending, though. This is one of those books I would recommend. I definitely recommend reading it, even if you do know the ending now. But if you didn't want spoilers, you probably shouldn't have been listening to these sorts of talks already. I mean, we've done this a lot. There's other books as well. Yeah, I definitely recommend this book. It was a fun read. It was good. It was well done. Horrible endings, but in a definitely 40k horror fashion. That I think that's one of the reasons I actually liked this one. It was well written and it did horror. For 40k, it did horror. And that's saying something because 40k is not a happy world set, a happy universe setting. A lot of 40k could be considered horror in general. But this took the horror of 40k and gave it a bit even more of a horror edge. It actually delivered horror as it said it would. Where other horror books, I think, fall short sometimes. Like The Bookkeeper's Skull felt more like a weird murder mystery deal that was, I felt, a little bit like obviously it's red herrings and a little too easy to grasp, and really was more conceptual horror, but didn't do it for me as much as like this book did, which was like, oh no, the horror is happening, and it is warp shenanigans on top of horrors of just general life sucks. Sometimes, especially in the 40k universe. But I think that's all I have to share with this one. A little bit of a short video. Like I said, check it out for yourself. I'm sure you can find it somewhere online. It's a fun read, especially if you're a horror fan like myself, for some of these readings and whatnot, and especially if you're a Warhammer 40k fan. That's all for tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. Hit like, hit subscribe to keep up with new releases if you haven't done so already. I have to decide what book to go over next. I'm debating between doing one of the fantasy horrors or trying to tackle another omnibus, or maybe something shorter but a little more. Man, they're a little goofier. like in one of the Gobbo stories. I have to really decide what I want to hit on next. So many things, too many things that I've forgotten over time. I think we might be. Yeah, I've still got some more I can cover for sure, but I think we're might be coming up on a point where I may have to stop some of these book video trends for a while, just to because I haven't been reading a lot lately. I've got a really big pile of to be read books, but I keep doing other things instead of getting around to that. The problems. Life happens, things are busy, can only focus on so many other things at once. Good night, everyone. Bye.